Good morning, guys. Welcome back to Morgan Hill Farms. We have been incredibly busy here. We are still harvesting quite a bit from our summer garden. We're still preserving a ton, and we have started homeschool. So that just adds a whole nother layer to the amount of stuff that we have going on. And on top of that, if you can't tell with my voice, I actually have been sick this past week. I actually had a temperature of 102, which is not typical for me. I spent one whole day just on the couch trying to recover, but I am feeling better. My voice is still a bit yucky. I was having some hip pain for a while, and I thought, oh no, I'm gonna have to have a hip replacement, but luckily we figured that one out as well. So everything's looking better for us here, but with the cooler mornings and getting into the end of August here, the fall garden is quickly approaching. I know that we are still in summer, but this is the time where you need to be planning and getting your fall garden in. Over the weekend, I had all the kids and Nate down here, and I told them, hey, if we all work together to prep for the fall garden, it'll take us about 90 minutes. It took us about 5 to 6 hours just between pulling plants, amending beds, and then planting the new crops. But I'm happy to say that most of the fall garden is in. I still do have some cover crops and some root crops and some things I'm going to direct sow down here that needs to get in, but the big work and the stuff that had to get done is now done, thank goodness. So that brings me into my topic today, which is the fall garden. Now, if you guys have never considered or ever planted a fall garden, you are missing out on a huge opportunity. This is an entirely new season to have abundant produce coming into your house. I have friends that have gardened for decades, and in fact, I mentioned to one of them yesterday, I said, hey, are you putting in a fall garden this year? And he said, I didn't even realize you could put in a fall garden. He said, what kind of things can you plant? So a lot of people don't really even think about the fall garden. You know, they're so tired from the summertime, they just kind of want to be done. But the fall garden is an entirely different beast. It is slower. Your days are shorter, so things do not get out of control and need to be harvested immediately. You don't have the pest pressure that you have during the summer just because of the life cycle of most of these insects. They're dormant during this time, that most of your plants are going to be growing into those fall and winter months. Also, the weeds, because the daylight is less and the hours are less, your weeds are not going to be as prolific. And then once that cooler temperature really sets in, your weeds are going to be non-existent. So the fall garden is just kind of joyful. You walk down here, you harvest a cabbage, some broccoli, some herbs, you go back up, you cook dinner. You don't have to be down here every day managing the garden. It's just basically here for you. It's kind of just like a ready-made grocery store, all set in place, no input from you other than cutting that cabbage out of the ground. And you would be amazed at the things that you can plant. So what I do is I look for my first frost date, which is in mid-October to late October. And then I count back from there and I say, okay, how many days do I have left between now and that first frost? And that will tell me what I can plant. So a couple of months ago, I went ahead and I planted some winter squash. That has like 85 days to mature. So that was really planted in the beginning of July or the end of June. So that one I wouldn't really consider a fall crop, but those things will produce for me into the fall, and then once the frost comes, they'll be dead. But things like your green beans, there is a variety called Provider. Those green beans are mature in 47 days. So you can plant your green beans now and get a harvest from those before your frost. Also things like summer squash. So your yellow squashes or your zucchinis, those are about 50 to 55 days depending on the variety. Another one to think about are sugar snap peas. Those can be 55 to 65 days. Also your green peas. So I don't do the green peas so much here in the fall time because by the time that I would have to plant them out, it is so incredibly hot that germination is a real issue for me. But if you live in a little bit of a cooler area, you can definitely do some green shelling peas. And then also I do like to get another succession of basil going. Here's some purple basil. But once the frost comes, this will be taken out. Basil does not tolerate the frost, neither will the green beans or that summer squash. But there are plenty of crops that will tolerate a frost and some things that will even tolerate freezes. Now you may think, you know, I'm in South Carolina, zone 8A, I'm subtropical, so I can grow into the winter months. But we actually get down into the teens and the 20s, and sometimes we're even in the single digits. So don't think that you can't plant a fall garden just because you have a cold climate, because we do get pretty cold here. Some of the things that you can grow that are going to survive past that first frost date are going to be things like your lettuces, arugula, bok choy, collard greens, spinach. You've got Swiss chard, endive, escarole. All of those kinds of greens will last past your first frost. Some will do better than others. I find that spinach actually can tolerate a much colder temperature than some of those other things, as well as the collards can too. You can also plant things like chives, green onions, and leeks. Your leeks will overwinter and you'll get a super early spring harvest off of those. Also your root crops, your carrots, your turnips, your beets, your kohlrabi. Now the carrots will survive freezes. My carrots go all the way through the winter and then I take them out in early spring. But your beets, you know, the greens might die back, but the root themselves will be just fine. Kohlrabi is the same thing, and your turnips are also the same thing. But I do try to get those out of the ground if I'm going to have a really big freeze or really, really cold temperatures. You can also do a lot of herbs in the fall time. Cilantro, dill is good down to like 25 degrees. You can do thyme, sage, oregano. I do basil in the house because that is super frost tender. So I do that in my house and I grow that over the winter inside just so that we can have fresh basil. So that's another option that you can do, is growing some of those herbs in a windowsill or under your grow lights during that season. And then there is the main star of the fall garden, which are the brassicas. So cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and kale. All of those are going to last for you through your first bit of freezes, depending on how cold you get. I have harvested cabbage into December here, so we can actually keep a good amount of stuff growing in the garden for quite a long time. And you can even extend that season, or you can provide some protection for them if you live in a really, really cold climate. So for my lettuces, for my leaf lettuces and things, I will provide like a row cover for those, which is just a really lightweight fabric. I get it from Johnny Seeds. I think it's called Agribon 19. And that gives me 2 to maybe a 4 degree protection. So if it's going to get to 30 degrees, underneath that frost blanket, it'll think it's like 34 degrees. But you can get frost blankets that give you protection up to like 12 to 15 degrees, which is really great. Now they typically let the water penetrate through, so if it's raining, you don't have to worry about taking that cover off so that your crops can get irrigated. But the only thing with the frost fabric is that it does reduce the amount of sunlight that's getting to your crops. So you may at times want to come down and uncover them just to give them a little bit of a boost in their growth, because they do need that daylight in order to continue growing. And to grow more rapidly, you want more light on them. Another thing that you can do is if you have a hoop house or a high tunnel. I don't have any of those, but I would love to have one of those. That is a great season extender, and you can double that with the row covers. So you have a hoop house, you've got a row of lettuce or greens growing, you put a frost fabric over that, and that will give you so much more protection. There is a book called The Winter Garden Harvest, and this guy actually is up in Maine, and he grows with just a really simple little hoop house and row covers, and he's harvesting food throughout the winter in Maine. So if he can do it, most of us can do it too. But another trick that I like to use in the winter to make sure that I am getting as much food in as possible are my green stalks. So I am going to load my green stalks out this year with green beans, snap peas, green peas, lots of herbs, and then also lots of those greens like your collards and your lettuces and your arugulas and escaroles. And when it gets cold, especially for the green beans and the peas and those things that are frost tender, I will put those in the garage at night. And then during the day, I'll roll them back out, because we're typically just getting those cooler temperatures at night. And if I can keep the frost off of them, then I'm good. Now my collards and lettuces and things like that, they'll tolerate a little bit more, so I may not have to move them in as frequently. But once we get into that cold winter weather, those things will have to come in every night, and then I just roll them right back out. It's literally like 5 or 6 feet from the garage to where I'm setting them in the driveway. So it's really, really easy, and it's a great way to extend your harvest. So I hope that you guys will consider doing a fall garden this year. Like I said, it's a whole nother season to harvest and be putting food on your table inside. If you haven't done it before, just give it a try. Now, a lot of things I had started inside a couple of weeks ago, and then I transplant those things out. But right now is the perfect time to direct sow some of your crops, even your brassicas if you wanted to do some cabbage and broccoli. The one trick is that because it is so hot still in the end of August, is you want to make sure that your irrigation is on, or that you're watering those plants very, very well. You do not want to let them dry out. That's going to be a big failure of germination for you. So if you can get down in the garden a couple of times a day and make sure that you're watering these seeds. Another trick that I like to use is to soak my seeds. So my green beans and peas and things like that, I will soak for 4 to 8 hours up at the house, and then I'll bring those down when they've doubled in size, and I'll plant those in the garden. And that gives me a jump start on that germination and ensures that those seeds are going to stay nice and moist and then germinate for me. Don't leave them in the water any more than 8 hours, because they could actually start to rot and could start to die on you. But that 4 to 8 hour window is a really good one to stick with. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions, I know the fall garden can kind of be new to a lot of people and can be a little confusing at times. Leave them in the comments below and I will answer those for you. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next one.